The day of my father's funeral was the day my stepmother showed her true colors. I'd always known she hated me, but I never imagined just how far she'd go. I'm Rachel Chen, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew what family meant. My dad, David Chen, raised me alone after my mom died when I was 5. He was my hero, a brilliant software engineer who worked hard to give me everything. We were happy, just the two of us, until Linda came into our lives. Dad met her at a charity gala 6 years ago. Linda Morgan was beautiful, charming, and seemed to adore both of us. "You'll finally have a mother figure," Dad said excitedly. I was 16 then, old enough to be suspicious but young enough to hope. The changes started small after their wedding. My college fund mysteriously needed to be reinvested. My car was sold because teenagers don't need such expensive things. Dad was always too busy with work to notice, and Linda always had a perfectly reasonable explanation. Then Dad got sick. The doctors called it an aggressive form of cancer. Within months, my strong, vibrant father became a shadow of himself. I put my computer science studies on hold to help care for him, but Linda insisted on being his primary caregiver. "Focus on your studies, dear," she'd say sweetly. "I'll take care of everything." What I didn't know then was that she was already making her moves. Dad was barely coherent most days, signing whatever documents she put in front of him. I should have paid more attention, but I was too caught up in my grief. The day Dad died, I held his hand and whispered, "I love you." His last words to me were, "The blue box, remember." Then he was gone. I didn't understand what he meant about the blue box. When I tried to look through his study, Linda stopped me. "Everything needs to be properly inventoried," she insisted, "for legal reasons." The funeral was elegant and expensive, exactly Linda's style. I sat in the front row, numb with grief, while Linda played the grieving widow perfectly. Her crocodile tears fooled everyone. Everyone except James Morrison. I noticed him during the service, tall, distinguished, watching everything with sharp eyes. He'd approached me afterward, introducing himself as Dad's personal lawyer. "My condolences, Miss Chen," he said quietly. "We need to talk soon." Before I could respond, Linda swooped in. "James, how lovely to see you. We'll set up a meeting next week to discuss everything." That night, Linda finally dropped her mask. "Pack your things," she said coldly, sipping expensive whiskey in Dad's study. "You have until tomorrow." I stared at her in shock. "What?" "You're 22, not a child. This house and everything in it belongs to me now. Your father left everything to his loving wife." Her smile was vicious. "You're not welcome here anymore." Dad would never. "Your father signed everything over to me months ago. Check the documents if you don't believe me." She waved at a stack of papers on the desk. "You're not his real family anymore." "I am. This is my home." I protested, tears streaming down my face. "You can't just." "I can and I will." She stood up, mask completely gone. "You've been a thorn in my side for 6 years. Did you really think I married your father for love?" "A boring workaholic 20 years my senior," she laughed. "Your father was worth millions from his software patents, you stupid girl. And now it's all mine." I felt sick. "Does money mean that much to you?" "Money means everything. Now get out before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." I spent that night in a cheap motel, crying until I had no tears left. The next morning, I went to the one place I thought might have answers, Dad's office at Chen Technologies. The security guard, Mike, had known me since I was little. He let me in despite Linda's orders to ban me from the building. "Your dad was a good man," he said gruffly. "Something ain't right about all this." I sat at Dad's desk, running my hands over the smooth wood, remembering all the times I'd visited him here. That's when I noticed it, a small blue USB drive taped under the desk drawer. My heart stopped. The blue box. Before I could plug it in, Linda burst into the office with 2 security guards I'd never seen before. "Arrest her," she shrieked. "She's stealing company property." I managed to slip the drive into my pocket before they grabbed me. But as they dragged me toward the elevator, James Morrison stepped out. "Perfect timing," he said calmly. "I was just coming to find you both. We need to have a meeting. Now." Linda tried to object, but something in James' expression made her pause. "Fine," she snapped. The conference room. 5 minutes. As the guards released me, James gave me a significant look. "Miss Chen, do you happen to have anything your father might have left for you? Perhaps something Blue? My hand tightened around the drive in my pocket. Suddenly, I understood. Dad had planned for this, and Linda's perfect world was about to shatter. The conference room felt too small for the tension building inside it. Linda sat at the head of the table, playing with her expensive wedding rings, while James Morrison calmly set up his laptop. "Is this really necessary?" Linda demanded. "I have a company to run." "Your company?" James raised an eyebrow. "Let's discuss that." He turned to me. "Rachel, the drive, please." My hands shook as I handed over the blue USB drive. Linda's face went pale. "What is that?" she snapped. "Insurance," James replied, plugging it in. David Chen was many things, but foolish wasn't one of them. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly there was my father, looking healthy and strong. This must have been recorded months before his diagnosis. "If you're watching this," Dad began, "then something has gone wrong. I'm either dead or incapacitated, and Linda has shown her true colors." Linda jumped to her feet. "Turn it off. This is ridiculous." "Security," James called, and 2 officers entered, real police this time. "Please ensure Mrs. Chen remains for the entire presentation." Dad's voice continued. "I first became suspicious when Linda suggested restructuring the company's ownership. Small changes," she said, "for tax purposes, but I've built security systems for 20 years. I know when someone's trying to hack their way in." He held up a stack of documents. Every paper Linda had me sign during my illness was digitally recorded by a hidden camera in my study, including the ones she thought transferred everything to her. Linda's face had gone from pale to green. "The signatures are all forgeries," Dad explained. "I never signed anything while on medication, and Linda's performance slipped. The signatures don't match under UV light." "You can't prove that," Linda screamed. James smiled coldly. "Actually, we can. Your forgery expert rolled over on you last week. He's very cooperative when faced with federal charges." Dad's image leaned forward. "But here's what really matters. Rachel, sweetheart, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I brought this woman into our lives. But I protected you." Tears rolled down my cheeks as he continued. 3 years ago, I transferred all my patents, company ownership, and personal assets into a blind trust. The only person with access is you, activated on your 23rd birthday or upon my death, whichever comes last." Linda collapsed back into her chair. "You see," Dad smiled sadly, "I knew Linda was after my money when she tried to cancel Rachel's college fund. A real mother doesn't steal from her child. So I played along, let her think she was winning. Meanwhile, everything was already safe." James paused the video and opened a folder. "As of this moment, Rachel Chen owns 87% of Chen Technologies, all associated patents, the house, and her father's personal assets. Total value, approximately $147 million. The room spun. I gripped the table for support. "That's impossible," Linda shrieked. "I had it all." "The papers were worthless," James cut in. "You've been CEO of an empty shell for 3 months, making decisions you had no authority to make. Decisions, I might add, that violated numerous SEC regulations." The police officers stepped forward. "Linda Morgan Chen," one began, "you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and attempted corporate theft." As they led her away in handcuffs, she turned to me, mascara running down her face. "You can't do this to me. I was his wife." "No," I said quietly. "You were a con artist who underestimated my father, and me." The next few weeks were a blur. James helped me step into my role as CEO. To everyone's surprise, I was good at it. Turns out watching Dad all those years had taught me more than I realized. Linda got 15 years in prison. During her trial, we discovered she'd done this before. Married wealthy men, forged documents, stolen everything. But Dad had been her biggest target and her biggest mistake. I found Mom's old jewelry box in Dad's study, the real blue box he'd mentioned. Inside was a letter telling me how proud he was, along with a photo of us at my high school graduation. On the back, he'd written, "Intelligence is inherited, but wisdom is earned. You have both, sweetheart." The company flourished under my leadership. I finished my computer science degree and developed new security software based on Dad's original patents. Chen Technologies became an industry leader in cybersecurity. 5 years later, I received a letter from Linda's prison. She was asking for forgiveness, claiming she changed. Inside was another forged document, a fake claim to company shares. I had to laugh. She never learned. I shredded the letter and went back to work in my office. Dad's old office. His photo sits on my desk, next to my CEO of the Year award. Sometimes I swear he's smiling a bit more than he was in the original picture. Last week, Linda was released from prison. She tried to approach me outside the company building, probably hoping for a handout. Security escorted her out while I watched from my top-floor office. "Your father would be so proud," James said, bringing in contracts for me to sign. I smiled, touching the small blue pendant I wear, made from Dad's favorite tie clip. "He already was," I replied. "He just made sure I knew it." That afternoon, I approved a new scholarship program for children of single parents. Every recipient gets a blue box USB drive with their acceptance letter, containing one message. Intelligence is inherited, but wisdom is earned. Make both count. Dad would have liked that.